Hi guys, hold on for a second. Before we proceed to the video, I have something very important to tell you. Professor John Vicofus has published his new book in collaboration with Little French Media, and the title of the book is Neoliberalism, Inequality, and Authoritarianism. This book details how neoliberalism impacts the geopolitical economy in the 21st century. You can buy it from Amazon, and the link is in the description. Thank you. Now let's proceed to the video.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to an introductory teaser session on a much longer video, which I have done about a comparison between the new Gilded Age, or as Donald Trump labeled it incorrectly, of course, on the day that he was inaugurated, January 20th, 2025, the golden age of America. To some degree, it is a golden age, just like the Gilded Age was a golden age for America, but for a very small percentage of Americans today, as it was then, namely the very wealthy. The term Gilded Age was one that Mark Twain made famous in a book he co-authored by the same title, by the way, Gilded Age, The Gilded Age, A Tale of Our Day. And the Gilded Age idea, of course, Mark Twain is a well-known critic of the social contract of the late 19th century, the critic of the political corruption, critic of the era of cartels, a critic of racism in America. He lived during the post-Reconstruction period. Now, the Gilded Age takes place between 1870 and 1900. After 1900, we have an era from 1900 to 1920 in American history called the Progressive Era. There are parallels, and it is not, these parallels are not just because, and you can find them everywhere, by the way, whether you're interested in the popular media accounts, articles, and even videos on the parallels and comparisons between the Gilded Age of the late 19th century, the last quarter of the 19th century, or the new Gilded Age of today. And it is not just, as I started to say, it's not just because of Trump. Actually, some of the scholarly material that began to appear and make comparisons between the late 19th century conditions in America and the neoliberal political economy and social contract in which the United States has operated since the Reagan administration institutionalized neoliberalism, which means corporate welfare, privatization of public property, deregulation, perpetual lowering of taxes on the rich, and placing the burden on the middle class and the working class. Exactly what both, by the way, parties, exactly what Trump is doing now with a new proposal in Congress to give back $4.5 trillion, this is on top, dollars to primarily the wealthiest Americans. This is on top of close to $2 trillion he gave back, he and the GOP gave back, with Democrats on board as well, by the way, in 2017 during his first administration. This is a massive transfer of wealth from the working class and the middle class, and this is what accounts for downward social mobility. This is what accounts for what many scholars, including, by the way, just statistics, apolitical statistics from the Department of Labor, accounts for the stagnation of wages in the last 50 years during the neoliberal era, okay? This is what accounts for the rising socioeconomic gap in America, the fact that the United States has 12% poverty rate, 37, 38 million people below poverty level. This is what accounts for homelessness all across the United States. So these are the social ills of resulting from the transfer of massive wealth from the bottom up, and it is about to get much worse with in the next 4 years with new proposals now on the table. Some of them through executive order, others, of course, through this unelected individual that Trump placed, namely one of his financiers, Elon Musk, to head the Department of Government Efficiency, which is anything but efficient, by the way. It is really, many articles have been in mainstream media, which supports Wall Street and the military-industrial complex, but yet it has exposed what really rests behind it, which really is about private gain for individual specific interests of very wealthy people. It has nothing to do with efficiency. Now, very briefly, the Gilded Age is also known in American history. Some of you who have studied American history at the college level know the age of robber barons and industrialists and big bankers who had an institutional hold and a hold on the judiciary, the central government, the federal government, state government, local government, a period of political corruption on a wide scale. This is why Mark Twain, who was, by the way, influenced by left-wing politics of the late 19th century, by socialists, by trade unionists, and so forth, which he supported, by the way, argued that if you scratch the surface of what appears to be like a golden age, what you find underneath the surface is corruption, decadence, a rotten social contract. Now, the age of the robber barons, of course, is not what we have today. Unlike the great philosopher George Santayana, I don't believe that history repeats itself, but I do believe that there are historical parallels that are similar. And today we have, as Senator Bernie Sanders points out, an oligarchy, which is in fact entrenched in the institutional structure and has its hold on government at all levels, from the congressional to the presidential to the executive branch, state, local. They are, in fact, Senator is right. Others have pointed this out. In fact, Joe Biden on his way out, Joe Biden of all people, who was a huge supporter of Wall Street and the military-industrial complex, and his policies advanced that oligarchy, criticized the very oligarchy on his way out the door from the White House. So today we don't have the robber barons and big bankers and industrialists of the late 19th century, but we have the Silicon Valley oligarchs, the big banker oligarchs, who have a hold on American society. This is institutionally, by the way, this is not just the executive branch. This is not just Congress, across the board. So this is ubiquitous. However, there is a difference between the late 19th century of the robber barons and the Silicon Valley oligarchs and big banker oligarchs of today. The difference is that in the late 19th century, the United States was rapidly industrializing. It was the first industrial revolution of America. It was strengthening its naval forces in the 1890s, and it was sustaining a trade surplus and balance of payments. It did not have a current account deficit as it does today. It did not have 126% debt to GDP ratio as it does today. It had a very low debt to GDP ratio. It was experiencing a period of promise because of the Industrial Revolution. Today, the United States is not on the ascendancy as it was during the industrialization of America. Today, the United States is experiencing a very slow but steady decline, made much worse because of the financialization of the economy, which of course did not exist during the the classical Gilded Age of the late 19th century. The financialization of the economy is basically that that speculation of the stock market and commodities drives the entire economy, and that such speculation undercuts the real economy. It undercuts living standards for the working class and the middle class. It concentrates massive wealth. As Senator Bernie Sanders said, the three people standing behind President Trump, there were a lot more, but three of the billionaires standing behind Trump had more wealth than 50% of the American population. More wealth than three people had more wealth than 175 million people. 175 million. This is massive concentration of wealth, 19th century style. Actually, there's more concentration of wealth today than there has ever been. And this is dangerous because of what it means to market equilibrium, because capitalism by its very structure expands and contracts. The contracting cycle is going to be very difficult the next time around. There was a contracting cycle in the 1930s, a major contracting cycle, the Great Depression, in other words, in 2008. Okay, China helped bail the US out, buying the paper, buying treasuries, and stimulating its own economies and that of other major economies. The next time around, we're not so sure this is going to happen. And we have, of course, the rhetoric of a golden age when, in fact, systemically, the country is not showing, the economy is not showing a golden age for anyone other than the oligarchy of Silicon Valley, the bankers, and the billionaires, speculators, investment group. And that's it, the large investors. Beyond that, we don't have a golden age. In fact, even Donald Trump recognized, just as of late, that one of the drains on the economy is the military-industrial complex, and he dared to argue, although he's proposing, he and his fellow Republicans are proposing another 100 to 150 billion, which will bring it over which will bring the defense budget over $1 trillion. And then he turned around and said, by the way, I've been thinking about basically talking to the Chinese and the Russians, and why do we have to spend $1 trillion on defense? Why not cut that in half? And immediately, of course, there was an impact in the stock market for defense sector stocks. So even the elites know that the parasitic financialization structure of the economy, of which the defense sector is a part, has crippled structurally the economy. It's not the fault, by the way, of Mexico, Canada, China, European Union, or anyone outside the United States if the United States has systemic problems in its economy, because the only country making policy, public policy, the only group making public policy is the group, the political class in Washington, D.C., behind which is Wall Street, by the way. They're the ones responsible. It's no one else's fault. They're the ones who have the burden to extricate themselves and the economy, not necessarily themselves, but the economy. So from this dilemma, so why don't they do it? Because there are huge profits, and Wall Street, the Wall Street oligarchy wants even more. as the Department of Government Efficiency has proved by dismantling or gutting government agencies that provide very valuable work and have provided very valuable work since the progressive era, since Theodore Roosevelt, who set up these bureaucracies, by the way, essentially professionalized these bureaucracies to serve Wall Street, by the way, to serve the business community and to serve the public to some degree. So what we have is a lot of parallels between the corruption and the decadence of massive capital concentration and a culture during the Gilded Age of racism, during the first Gilded Age, racism, misogyny, anti-labor sentiment, anti-trade union sentiment, xenophobia, a sentiment against democracy itself. This is why a number of critics, beyond the independent scholarly thinkers and leftist scholarly thinkers, beyond that group, even mainstream liberals agree that the United States is on a slippery slope to authoritarianism, okay, behind the thin veil of democracy. There is a thin veil of democracy, and behind it rest policies which are not so different than policies that an authoritarian government, perhaps in the global south, okay, is pursuing. I invite you to join me for the much lengthier video, an analytical video on the Gilded Age and the Golden Age, the new Gilded Age, in other words, the Gilded Age of the 19th century compared with the Gilded Age of our times under the neoliberal financialization political economy. I also invite you to write comments, ask questions, and by all means, I ask you to please join this channel. This is an educational channel. It's managed by my very good friend, Asad Alim, and he is committed to educational issues of all types. Thank you very much.